Savagian. He graduated from St. George University School of Medicine in Grenada. He is currently a fourth-year anesthesiology resident and is currently Education Chair of Anesthesiology Resident Education, as well as serving as one of the chief residents of anesthesiology at Mount Sinai Morningside and West Hospitals. Dr. Savagian will be pursuing a dual fellowship in adult cardiothoracic anesthesia and critical care medicine at Duke University from 2022. Aside from his clinical passion for anesthesiology, he invests much of his time in resident education and betterment. Our second presenter today is Dr. Nirupama Krishnamurthy. Dr. Krishnamurthy is a third-year internal medicine resident at Mount Sinai Morningside in West. Our Mount Sinai Morningside in West very well represented today, which is absolutely wonderful. She completed medical school in India and thereafter worked with a cardiologist in her hometown to set up a cardiac care hospital that helped treat the underserved population. Thereafter, she moved to the United States to pursue a master's in public health at Yale School of Public Health, and following graduation, worked with Dr. Mary Woolley at UCSF to conduct health outcomes research pertaining to cardiac rehabilitation. In 2019, Dr. Krishnamurthy moved to New York to start her residency in internal medicine. She is passionate about cardiology, research, and medical education, and will be staying at Mount Sinai Morningside next year for a year of fellowship in cardiac imaging modalities. So congratulations, thanks to both of you for being here. And we're going to begin with the presentation from Dr. Savagian.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me and see my slides?
Absolutely.
Very good. Well, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Andres Savagian. I want to say thank you to Dr. Karani and Dr. Fowler and the IME for inviting me here today to talk about a topic I find to be of much importance that relates to every single person in healthcare. A big thank you to Dr. Mark Henley Isaac and Dr. Olga Paniagua, who are two of my amazing co-residents that have graciously allowed me to include some of their similar work from the American Society of Anesthesiologists Committee for Professional Diversity grant. And lastly, I want to thank my mentor, someone who I can call a friend, my program director, Dr. Brian Mahoney, for his unwavering support and help. My presentation today is on the impact of implicit bias in the perioperative setting on healthcare workers. I have no disclosures or conflicts of interest. The objectives of my talk are to identify how implicit bias affects healthcare workers and to learn ways to deal with patient prejudice, racism, and professional accommodation. But the most important objective is to increase awareness of this. This goes well beyond completing yearly peak modules, but to be practiced by our staff members at all times, because real change is slow, hard, and imperceptible. This talk hopefully serves as just another avenue to make this a topic of conversation. We all know that these things occur, but what do we do about them, and how do we react to them, and where do we go from there?
Hi.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
I have some belongings over here.
Yeah, sure.
What's going to happen to them after? A lot of shady characters walking around here.
Oh, so I'm one of the residents from...
No, my
this
belongings.
program. Oh, your belongings? The nurse will take care of it, okay?
Okay, they'll be locked up?
Yes.
Okay.
And your name tag will
Who
be
are
on.
you?
I'm one of the residents from anesthesia.
What's a resident?
Residents, basically training. We are training.
Oh, training, so you're a
anesthesia.
student.
No,
I'm
we
his
are...
attending. I'm supervising him at all times.
Okay, can I get a real doctor in here, or?
Well, we are all... This is a teaching hospital, so I'm one of the residents.
Okay, well, what are you here for?
We're going to take care of you, providing you with anesthesia.
Who's going to provide you with anesthesia?
Anesthesia team, both of us.
Not you, though.
I will be part of the team, though.
Since when do students provide anesthesia? What is this?
I'm graduated from medical school, so this is the anesthesia training.
Like
so
here, I don't know where you're from, but here in this country,
yes,
doctors provide anesthesia, not students, and that's completely unacceptable.
Well,
We're actually both doctors. So
Who are you?
I'm his attending. I'm an attending anesthesiologist, and this is my resident anesthesiologist.
Okay.
Both doctors, both graduated from med school with degrees.
Where did you graduate from?
I went to University of Arizona.
Okay. Where did you graduate from?
University of Virginia.
All right. I mean, I don't really I don't really like what's going on here. I came here to have a surgery today, very
Right.
important to me, and now, all these people are coming in that are not the type of people that I'm used to or really like, and I didn't choose this, so this is crazy. If someone's gonna take care of me, it has to be somebody American. You can take care of me, but no. So let's just leave, just move on. We'll move on from this. Let's not keep going. I grew up here, okay? Been here all my life, and I know what I want, and I'm telling you what I want, and I want this person not to provide any medical care for me. There's no.
So this type of situation made me feel like sometimes obviously upset and angry. Also, obviously feel being judged and sometimes can be feeling unsafe. Being an immigrant, I was born in China, went to Canada, and then came back down to United States and get med school in Virginia. I've seen this type of situation happen a lot of times, and personally I feel like it's a very difficult situation, and because that you're being trained, you spend so much time and money and effort trying to get going through the medical school, the resident trainings, and just because how you look, the way that your color is different from the other people, and your accent or my accent, you're treated differently, and they kind of invalidate my ability to take care of people. And this can make, in the setting where I'm actually trying to providing the care and help them getting better, this is especially difficult. So I do think this is a very important issue to be addressed.
The idea to pursue a project like this actually started back in September of 2019, while I was an intern on my surgery rotation. It was there I'd witnessed countless patients make inappropriate, offensive, and demeaning comments to nurses of all races, ethnicities, and genders, and it always seemed to just go by the wayside. If one were to read the patient's rights policy of every medical facility in the US, you will always find a similar statement, which is that the healthcare facility will provide treatment to the patient and not discriminate based on one's race, religion, sex, disability, or sexual orientation. When I started this endeavor, there were very few hospitals in the US that provide a supportive statement for the contrary. So what about discrimination unto the healthcare worker that is treating them, whether that is a technician, a nurse, or a physician based on their race, religion, sex, disability, or sexual orientation? There have been numerous studies regarding the biases of providers towards patients, but much less has been studied about patients' biases towards healthcare workers. Each time this occurs and nothing is done is yet another assumption that those who witnessed it agree with it or do not think it's a problem. If you ever overhear a fellow doctor or nurse say something inappropriate to another colleague, most people would feel compelled to address that doctor or nurse publicly or privately and let them know that what they did or say was not okay. But this is seldom done when the patient says something inappropriate to one of your colleagues. We should all want to try and break that mold that usually lets these things slide. That is why this project is about exposing that implicit bias that becomes explicit. Hospital systems at large have done little acknowledging this issue, nor has there been a concise approach to responding to it. This then leaves the nurse or physicians to deal with it in their own terms and sucking it up. And sometimes these encounters, they dig up old wounds. In recent years, only several hospitals in the US have amended their own patients' rights policy to address this issue of patient behavior toward healthcare workers. In 2018, Penn State Health updated their patients' rights policy and stated, quote, requests for changes of provider or other medical staff based on that individual's race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, or gender identity will not be honored. It is very explicit verbiage that is not present in many other health systems' patients' bill of rights. Mayo Clinic, Parkland Hospital, University of Michigan, and Maryland have all recently released their own policy on this issue in just the last 3 to 4 years. Instances in which patients exhibit prejudice in the form of racist beliefs to healthcare workers occurs with alarming frequency. In 2017, a survey of about 800 or so physicians reported that 60% have experienced patient bias. Implicit bias is that natural behavior one exhibits that is rooted from their own unconsciousness about how they feel towards a particular person without overt acknowledgement on their part. Unconscious attitudes and stereotypes can manifest in the criminal justice system, the workplace, the school setting, and in the healthcare system. The patient's demand for accommodation through provision of care by the physician based on the race or gender presents a potential ethical dilemma for the healthcare team tasked with providing non-discriminatory care and appropriate regard for patient autonomy. Nobel Prize-winning psychologist and economist Daniel Kahneman's systems of thinking explains that implicit bias tends to be a more unconscious, automatic firing of quick thoughts, things that are more natural. We all have them in every aspect of our lives. But the main difference here is when the patients may turn their implicit bias into an explicit bias. As you saw in that first scenario, the patient was very effortful, deliberate, and methodical, and to him had a rational, cohesive, and logical thought pattern in his request, while simultaneously failing to realize it is because of his implicit bias, he's beginning to act more obtrusively and exhibiting these thoughts and emotions to the healthcare workers. Microaggressions are a statement, an action, or incident regarded as an instance of indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against a person of racial or ethnic minority. Or the kinds of remarks, questions, or actions that are painful because they have to do with a person's membership in a group that's discriminated against or subject to stereotypes. And the key part of what makes them so disconcerting is that they happen casually, frequently, and often without any harm intended in everyday life. So what did we do? We aim to provide insight into these phenomena from the perspective of those experiencing them. We actually interviewed trainees from around the nation to hear in their words, their experiences and how it made them feel. And based on these interviews, we scripted scenarios to present the experiences with the knowledge of those involved. All the characters in these scenarios are actors with the knowledge of the script, except the bystander, who was the nurse and the attending anesthesiologist in that first scenario. Following an initial simulated scenario, debriefing and allyship training was provided to the bystander to apply in a repetition of that initial scenario. Simulation has served as a valuable tool for team training in crisis resource management and team steps, which is team strategies and tools to enhance performance and patient safety. The principles of team training can be applied to medical ethics in the same way they lend themselves to clinical care and patient safety.
Hi, Mr. Crum. My name's Dr. Matthew. I'm one of the anesthesia residents here today.
And I'm Dr. Brown. I'm also an anesthesia resident. That'll be part of your team.
Oh, good morning. But who's she?
This is Dr. Matthew. She's part of your anesthesia team.
Oh, you're too young. You're too young and cute to be a doctor. Are you sure you're not a model?
No, I'm actually one of the physicians here. I'll be taking care of you.
Oh, okay.
So we'll both be part of your anesthesia team. Do you have any questions regarding your anesthesia for Dr. Matthew or myself?
Nah, I just have a little bit of a hard time believing she's a doctor. I mean, look at her. She's gorgeous.
She's more than qualified to take care of you, and she'll be a great part of the team.
Okay.
So Daryl, tell us how you felt when you first heard the patient make those comments to Lauren.
So during the first encounter, I definitely was uncomfortable with what the patient said to Lauren. And I think that at that time I was kind of nervous to offend the patient, but I also wanted to make sure that, we move forward with his care. And I said that in a pretty indirect way. I think I addressed the comments in an indirect way.
Hi, Mr. Crum. My name's Dr. Matthew. I'm part of your anesthesia team today.
And I'm Dr. Brown. I'll also be part of your anesthesia team.
Gotcha. Wait, who's with you?
This is Dr. Matthew and I'm Dr. Brown, and we're both part of your anesthesia team.
She's too young and cute to be a doctor. Are you sure you're not a model or something?
No.
I'm actually a physician here. I'm going to be taking care of you today.
And Mr. Crump, when you say comments like that, while I know it's not your intention, that discredits Dr. Matthew's training. She's more than qualified to take care of you, and we function as an anesthesia team.
Oh, I'm just saying, she's just gorgeous. Look at her. I'm just having a hard time believing she's a doctor.
She is a doctor, and I'm a doctor, and we're both part of your team and are here to take care of you. But again, when you make comments like that, you're discrediting her education and how long it took for her to be in this position.
Got it, doctor. Whatever you say.
and Dr. Matthew will take the lead with your care.
Okay, gotcha.
So now that you have gotten some training, how do you feel about your comments that you made?
I think after the training, my focus shifted from just trying to speed up the interaction and move forward to really helping my colleague feel supported and just letting my colleague know that I'm here and I support you, and then also telling the patient that while it may not have been their intention, this is how we felt with what they said.
I felt that the patient had certain perceptions about me since I'm a female. I felt that he thought, compared to my male colleague, that I was less intelligent and had less decision-making capacity than he did.
Some of these clips were filmed prior to the pandemic, flashback to the greater days where mask wearing was not a daily part of our lives. The simulation goals and endpoints were appropriately opening lines of communication with the patient, have the participant utilize techniques for de-escalation, and to provide space for the patient to exercise autonomy in the direction of their care. Also, to have the participant exercise a methodical approach to the patient's request. The main goal, though, is to increase the number of physicians and providers comfortable in dealing with patients who unexpectedly exhibit repeated inappropriate views and biased remarks, and foster an environment in our healthcare system where we do not normalize verbal abuse of healthcare workers from patients, as well as to illustrate an enough is enough scenario where patient care can effectively and appropriately be terminated if deemed necessary. Dr. Kamani Paul-Emile, a professor at law at Fordham, has published extensively on dealing with racist patients. When considering a patient's request for physician reassignment based on race or ethnic background, there are 5 ethical and practical factors: the patient's medical condition, his or her decision-making capacity, options for responding to the request, the reasons for the request, and the effect on the physician. As a part of our debriefing, we had participants utilize an appropriate strategy for intervention, including principles such as cuss words, which are "I am concerned," "I am uncomfortable," and "I believe this is a safety issue," each used in an escalating manner. Also use mutual support and desk conflict resolution, which is describe, express, suggest, and consequences, and situation monitoring. This scenario shows how a physician can engage in a conversation with a patient who is making inappropriate and distressing remarks while attempting to limit unacceptable conduct. The goal is, remember, is not to debate the patient and change their thinking. It should be to cultivate a therapeutic alliance and be willing to listen to them and what they are afraid of. The provider should be aiming to understand what the root causes of the remarks may be, and then redirecting the conversation toward the patient's own medical care. And that begins with redirection. Try to shift the focus back to their care. Use preference statements to clearly communicate their preferences as a form of active listening. And revisit. Don't be afraid to revisit a microaggression or a biased comment, even if a moment has passed. Use impact statements to directly address the affected individual. And paraphrasing demonstrates understanding and reduces the defensiveness of both you and the speaker. It is the skill, though, asking questions that ultimately makes a difference. A strategic question creates motion and options. It avoids why and yes or no answers, which is empowering to the receiver and allows for difficult questions to be considered. And reframe. Lead the conversation to create a different look at the situation. When I first initiated my talk with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, I was happy to learn that work already had been made into creating a Mount Sinai policy similar to other major health systems in the US. In many health systems, physicians and their supervisors do not know how to effectively address a patient with inappropriate discriminatory demands due to an absence of a policy addressing bias or a lack of resources, and they're always handled on a case-by-case basis. Mount Sinai has in fact officially released a manual as to how to appropriately respond to racist and discriminatory patient behavior. And manuals and memos are nice, but they aren't worth the paper they're printed on without actions to match. But it is definitely a solid step in the right direction. So what do we find? Something, though, to consider is the ultimate impact on trainees if we accept the patient's requests. Is removing trainees, conducive to a learning environment? Removing a trainee does not at all lead to a path forward of being better. Also, if they are subjected to a patient with biased or bigoted comments, this may translate that they are not competent doctors or providers, or they're not doing a good job. Over time, it's not wrong to assume that trainees and full physicians may feel so disconcerted and leave the field entirely. So we queried all the participants and found that after going through the simulation, they did in fact feel more comfortable in addressing and approaching a situation like this. And they said they felt more comfortable and confident now in doing so, that there is a Mount Sinai policy backing it up. Now, my time here was limited today, as there is much more I can tell you. We have done many, many more of these simulations than I showed you today. And for subsequent years, we hope and plan to include other specialties and more participants to increase awareness, because again, real change is slow, hard, and imperceptible. These are my references. This is my email if there are any follow-up discussions anyone would like to have. And lastly, I would like to thank everyone at the Harvard Macy conference in terms of the engaging sessions and topics and feedback with my project. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to go, and I want to express my gratitude once again to the IME to allow me to showcase and discuss my work here today. Thank you again and very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Savajian. We're going to save questions till the end. I'm going to turn the floor over to Dr. Krishnamurthy.
Okay, can you hear me and see my slides? Perfect, thank you. All right, so good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes or so talking about my medical education project titled The Development of a Biostatistics and Research Methodology Teaching Curriculum. I do not have any conflicts of interest or disclosures. So here's a brief outline of my talk. I will start with a background, followed by needs assessment, project aims, project outline, challenges, current project status, project evaluation, and future directions. So to give a brief background, the ACGME program requirements for graduate medical education in internal medicine states that residents must be provided education in critical appraisal of medical evidence. It also states that residency programs should foster advancement in the residents' knowledge of the basic principles of scientific inquiry, including how research is designed, conducted, evaluated, explained to patients, and applied to patient care. The ACGME website further states that medicine is both an art and a science. The physician is a humanistic scientist who cares for patients. This requires the ability to think critically, evaluate the literature, appropriately assimilate new knowledge, and practice lifelong learning. The program and faculty must create an environment that fosters the acquisition of such skills through resident participation in scholarly activities. And this is something that profoundly resonated with me. There was a study conducted in 2007 that was published in JAMA. And this study evaluated residents' understanding of biostatistics and interpretation of research results. The study found that about 75% of residents reported not understanding the statistics that they encountered while reading journal articles, while 82% were able to correctly interpret a relative risk. Only 37% were able to interpret an odds ratio, and 10% the results of a Kaplan-Meier analysis. This article called out for attention and recommended that basic biostatistics be included in residency curricula. While most residency programs achieve the ACGME recommendations through EBM sessions and journal clubs, as evidenced by this study, there needs to be a more specific focus on teaching biostatistics. Among the different modalities of learning, asynchronous learning is probably one of the best that is suited to the residency program because it allows for flexibility of self-paced learning and self-directed learning, which is extremely essential given the limited schedule with busy residency programs. It's also been shown to be extremely helpful in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic to continue graduate medical education. So with this in mind, we conducted a needs assessment. A needs assessment questionnaire was distributed to our entire residency program in 2021 by my colleague, Mantej Sembi. This questionnaire focused mainly on the first and second years and was administered between mid and late 2021. We had a total of 38 responses, and a majority of the responders were first years, followed by second years, and then third years. So when asked if residents ever had to give up on a research project halfway because they were unable to complete the data analysis, 32% said yes, and the remainder said no. When asked if they had difficulty finding help with data analysis for projects, 83% answered yes. When asked if they had any interest in an informal and practical statistics and data analysis course, 100% answered yes. When asked how much time they might be willing to commit to such a course, majority said 1 hour per week, and the remainder wanted it to be spaced out even further. We had a similar survey sent out between April and May of 2021 as part of our Research and Scholarly Work Council, and the results were very similar. So in the interest of time, I'll only present some of the additional information that we received from this questionnaire. When asked about barriers to starting a research project in the past academic year, 40% reported a lack of time, 23% lack of biostatistics support, 20% lack of faculty mentors, and 17% lack of research skills pertaining to study design. When asked, when should a research bootcamp be offered in terms of the best time of the year, there was an almost equal split between any time in the first year of residency to the first half of the second year of residency. Nobody wanted it to be in the second half of their second year because that's very close to the time when fellowship applications start. So in order to have a competitive CV for fellowship matches, most residents wanted to have an early start in their training. With these results in mind, we decided to create a teaching curriculum for basic biostatistics and research methodology. Our target audience would be residents focusing on PGY1s and early PGY2s. And this would be in an effort to help them with research so that they could be more competitive candidates for fellowship applications. We wanted to offer residents the option to learn programming in a programming language of their choice, such as SAS, SPSS, R, or Stata. This would allow them the opportunity to work with a range of sample sizes and also gain knowledge and build skills in large data sets if they so desired. Our residency program is very diverse, and residents come in at different levels of proficiency with research. So we wanted to allow for flexibility for self-paced learning and programming through asynchronous teaching so that we could meet them where they are in terms of existing or prior knowledge. Lastly, we wanted to make the teaching resources readily available for the residents so that they could work on them at any time, any place. So we decided to divide our project into two main areas. First, starting with a basic overview of study types and designs, which would benefit all the residents and offer a basic understanding of what they're reading in journal articles, how to appraise them, and so forth. And then this would be followed by a deep dive into statistical analyses for those who wanted to take it further and learn more to be able to conduct their own independent research. This is where things got extremely fun. Turns out that I was not the only one with this idea, and soon this became a collaborative education project. So we decided to go over the basic study design and interpretation of statistics during our evidence-based medicine sessions that were incorporated into our academic half days. This was spearheaded by Dr. Osorio, who is our assistant program director, and Rafael, who is one of our chiefs who is going into HEMONC fellowship next year. For the deep dive into statistical analyses, we decided to create a video repository that residents could readily access. So we decided to create video modules in 3 different programming languages. And we split this task among the 3 of us. So Nadeem Bilani, our first year intern who worked on the SPSS module, Mantaj Sembi is our second year resident and he worked on the R modules, and I worked on the SAS modules. So for the basic study design EBM sessions, we broke them up by type of studies. So cross-sectional, case control, cohort, and clinical trials. So these would typically be 1-hour sessions in which residents would present and discuss a journal article that used a particular study design, and then learn how to interpret the statistical data and critique the research methodology. The idea was to make these sessions interactive and have them facilitated by the chiefs and faculty so that residents could really discuss, ask questions, and in a way, take charge of their own learning. For the statistical analysis videos, this is a segment of the curriculum outline. So the modules really start with basics, like how do you import data? How do you clean it? How do you obtain measures of frequency? Following this, they're broken into study type, and each video teaches the learner how to code step by step, and then how to interpret the results that they get from the program that they just wrote. So the modules are designed to be incrementally complex and build on topics that were previously covered. Needless to say, we ran into several challenges putting this together. Firstly, owing just to the vastness of subject matter, it was often difficult to figure out where to draw the line and stop. Moreover, it was definitely difficult coordinating the timelines of essentially 3 simultaneous projects. We definitely had delays because of COVID surges. And finally, it took a while for us to identify what the best resources were for creation and dissemination of this teaching project. I would not dare to say that we have it all figured out. It is still a work in progress. So that brings us to where we are now. We just started with our overview at the EBM sessions last week. The SPSS videos are ready, and they are going to undergo review by test users for feedback shortly. The R and SAS videos are in process and should be completed soon. We hope to launch them this spring. So here's a quick clip of one of the statistics videos to get a better understanding of what we're doing. I think that clip has a little bit of difficulty, so I'm just going to play it on. Please let me know if you're not able to hear it.
So this is what my SAS screen looks like, and I'll be sharing a bunch of screen capture videos and explaining my programming as we go. I would recommend that you have your SAS program open and ready, and that you program alongside. You can pause the video if necessary at times and try to work with the program on your own time. All right, so there are 2 ways to import a data set into SAS. One of the easiest ways, especially if you have an Excel spreadsheet, is to use the importing wizard. So let's work with the importing wizard. So going to File, and there's a selection button called Import Data. You click on that and go to the folder where your data set is located. Select the data set, and then you see the screen pop up. So there's a couple of things here. So you see the file path where it says H upload primary biliary cirrhosis. So that's where you imported the file from. And then it shows you that the data type is an Excel worksheet. Now, the output SAS dataset segment of this window shows you the library and the name of the dataset that's going to import. So my default is work. So when this dataset gets imported into SAS, it's going to go into my work folder or the work library. And the dataset is going to be called primary biliary cirrhosis. on the work library.
So as you can see, this is slow paced, and so that the learners have the ability to go back and try stuff at their own pace. So in terms of evaluating the impact of our work, we have subjective and objective measures. In terms of subjective measures, we will have pre and post questionnaires to assess the utility of the modules and obtain feedback from the users. Objectively, we will have pre and post knowledge tests. We will also be monitoring video view count. And in the long run, we plan to compare the number of independent research projects completed pre and post teaching modules. We're very hopeful for a bright future for this project. We hope that we can incorporate this project into a dedicated research curriculum next academic year, hopefully starting next academic year. We also hope to be able to conduct in-person lectures and programming demos in the future. And with continued collaboration with the Center for Biostatistics at Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, we hope to get more hands-on help and statistical consultation for independent research projects. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Osorio and my team for all their help, without which this project wouldn't be where it is today. I would also like to thank Dr. Karani, Dr. Fowler, and the IME leadership, the Harvard Macy program, and my residency program leadership for their help and this opportunity to present my work. And last but not the least, thanks to all my friends and family that keep me sane. These are pictures from my COVID-style wedding 10 days ago. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Krishnamurthy. Congratulations on your wedding.
Thank you.
And I think before we open for questions, I wanted to ask this audience if you could unmute and give an incredible round of applause, because whenever I'm at the PGME course, I think to myself, the future is incredibly bright for us in education. And hearing Dr. Savadjian and Krishnamurthy today, I know you would all agree with me. So if you could unmute, give them a big round of applause. That's great. So congratulations to both of you. And if you can, then just raise your virtual hand, and I'll, once I see it on the screen, we're happy to take questions for them. Dr. Fowler, please go ahead.
I have a quick question for Dr. Savadjian. That was an excellent presentation of a very intriguing project that I'd like us to build off of for the medical school. What I was interested in is, what did you do in the coaching portion between the two simulations? How did you coach the people on better ways to react to the situation?
Oh, yeah. So thank you for the question. Yeah. So part of our allyship training and allyship and debriefing was basically some of the goals that we had in terms of most of the more important things is that people don't do is acknowledging the effect on the person who's being insulted or having the negative comments directed towards you in front of the patient, and just to kind of have them realize and know that, hey, this is wrong, this to do. I mean, some of the things is just kind of in the moment, in the heart of it, you got to just, rethink. And that's why some of the things we talked about when I was coaching, like say that attending anesthesiologist, impact statements and strategic questioning is what is most important. And again, this is not like, we got to have practice with this. It's just exposure to this and awareness of this which is most important.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Andre, in the simulations, I assume the bystander knew that the patient wasn't really a patient, right? The bystander knew that this was a simulation, not an actual patient encounter.
Correct. The bystander knew that it was I mean, they also recognized who the person was, which was someone in the department, but they had no idea what was going to happen. They had no idea that the patient was going to be exhibiting and having actions of these and saying these things. To be very simply, what they were told was like, you're the attending and your junior is going to go talk to a patient and just do a pre-evaluation for surgery. That's it.
Dr. Foreman, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much to both of you for really great projects, both of which I'm interested in, of course, in pediatrics, maybe glomming onto and taking advantage of for our own trainees, both and our own faculty. I wanted to ask Dr. Savajian just a little bit more about what you just got asked about, which is in your training, do you reference the new, and I may have missed this, I apologize, because I got the new Sinai policy that came out last spring, I believe was finalized. That's titled Responding to Racist and Discriminatory Patient Behavior. And if so, how do you use that and how do you advertise that amongst your faculty, trainees, staff, et cetera?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yeah, I actually alluded to it and I talked about, yes, it was part of my presentation.
Okay. Sorry, I missed, I was like, I was searching for it at the same time. And so I found it.
Yes, so I know that there is, it's a very, very, well-encompassing manual. There's suggested messaging to patients, suggested messaging for targeted staff members, and what to do in future education. And they go through many different scenarios, which are good, and we utilize things from them. It's another important thing that what I liked about this protocol was that the process in regards to what is happening during right after this happens goes into detail. So, and this has been shared amongst our department, and I mean, I have not personally shared it amongst any other departments, but I believe that this was sent out and maybe this needs to be sent out again.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely think it's something that we all need reminding of very regularly. The scenario you showed us was very nicely done, but I always think the hardest one is the first one, which we didn't see a resolution to, is when a patient asks for a different provider or says they will not take a provider. That is very challenging on the spot to deal with, and this policy does provide you with some support to say we can't do that, or you can choose elsewhere.
Of course. And another thing too, again, there's so much more that I could be explaining and showing and talking about, but the biggest important thing to also remember is that this is also dealing with the non-emergent patient, like the person who is not a traumatic patient and is yelling out ethnic slurs right as soon as we bring him to the operating room and he has a couple gunshot wounds. Like, we're not talking about that situation. We're talking about elective, because when we see patients, we see them in the morning, coming in, that's the situation. But obviously this takes, this is apparent and present in, doctors' offices, in outpatient settings as well.
Additional questions?
I'm Dr. Andrelli. So great presentation. And I know this has been something that's been a need the residents have been asking for. I guess one of my concerns is, as we've seen in the past, when residents have limited statistical knowledge and then they learn how to use a large database, they sometimes then, evaluate the research in the wrong way because they're not necessarily asking the right question. I don't know if you have any comments on your thoughts about that.
For sure. That's a great point, Dr. Andrelli. When I started learning programming myself, I ran into a lot of those pitfalls as well. And I was lucky to have mentors who were able to guide me. I think as this project moves forward, I don't think this is meant to be kind of like an independent, all in all kind of resource. I think it's just something that residents can use to get a head start. But of course, we do expect that they'll have mentors that they can reach out to that can help them. We're also hoping that, if we could get some more kind of statistician support, like a consultation or office hour or something of that sort, that would be a great resource as well.
And I know that's something Dr. Osorio is working on, and Dr. Thomas is on, and Dr. Sword has helped us with getting more hours, and hopefully eventually we'd like to have someone who actually spends some time over here on the west side, but I think, we're hopefully move forward with that. But thank you, it was a great presentation.
Thank you so much.
I think we need to emphasize to all researchers how important it is to consult with the biomathematicians, biostatisticians before you start the project, instead of waiting till the end when you have the data and said, would you run a p-value on this for me?
Absolutely agree with you.
Any final questions?
I might just ask Dr. Krishnamurthy, do you plan on sharing beyond internal medicine your videos? Because I think some of the basic ones on different types of studies and how to go about what the questions are raised by them is actually quite helpful. And it is often hard to find those basic introductory sessions. So in pediatrics, I think it might actually be helpful to us. So I wondered if you might share.
Absolutely. This is an open resource, for all Mount Sinai residents. And I've spoken to some fellows who have also been interested. So yes, we do plan on making this more available to all the trainees.
Thank you. So thank you once again. Congratulations to both Dr. Krishnamurthy and Savajian. Great work.